Welcome into the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast. My name is Joel Silverberg. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out the KIB podcast, whether you're doing so on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen or to watch. Please be sure to like and subscribe. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you automatically subscribe to the podcast as well as any other video features that go up on our YouTube channel. And as we continue to climb up in YouTube subscribers, we want to thank everybody for getting us to where we've gotten over the last year or so since we started putting our podcast on our YouTube channel. And again, we'd like to remind everybody that our podcast is brought to you by Wings Etc. out on Level Road, just outside of Turkey Creek, right off the interstate out in West Knoxville. Be sure to head on by to Wings Etc. They've got daily specials throughout the week, but the food there is fantastic and a great place to watch the game, whether you're watching hockey or any other sport. And right now, it's a fun sports time of the year with the World Series going on, as well as the start of the NHL and NBA seasons. Of course, we're right in the thick of football season, so any of your sports viewing pleasures can be found over at Wings Etc., proud sponsors of the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast. So Knoxville coming off a win over Roanoke on Saturday. They will play Roanoke for the third consecutive game coming up this Friday before heading to Birmingham on Saturday. It'll be the first time that Knoxville has seen the Bulls this season. Obviously, they faced off back on October 10th in an exhibition game, but several roster changes have been made for Birmingham since that night. And Birmingham has gotten off to a competitive start. No wins as of yet, but two post-regulation losses and then a one-goal loss to Pensacola on Saturday. And so we'll see if the Bulls can bounce back with a game on Thursday night that they have upcoming. Knoxville will take on Roanoke on Friday, and then Knoxville and Birmingham will face off in Pelham for the first time this season. Looking at Knoxville and Roanoke from Saturday's game, the Ice Bears do a nice job at bouncing back from Friday night's loss as the Ice Bears fell 5-0 in their home opener on Friday. But I think you need to give a lot of credit to Knoxville for how they came out and responded in this game on Saturday. They looked very crisp offensively. Even in the first period, they were down 1-0, gave up a late goal to Matt Dorsey. That was really unfortunate for Knoxville. They had played really well. They outshot the Rail Yard Dogs 18-9 in the first period alone. And you could actually make the argument that this was Knoxville's best period despite not scoring at that point in time. Matt Dorsey makes a great play to speed through the neutral zone, gets through the left circle, and then sweeps across the crease to put the puck around Tyreek Oughton, who is making his professional debut and played very well in net. That was the only goal that he gave up before he left in the third period with an injury, and Steven Mundinger came in and did a nice job at preserving the lead down the stretch. But I thought Knoxville in transition play, both out of the neutral zone and out of their own zone, a really good job at generating offense. A couple of their goals were scored in transition, especially this goal here by Andrew Karapov. So the rookie gets his first career professional goal. Some big saves made by Ty Oughton. And I thought as well, when you look at what Knoxville was able to do, generating a lot of chaos around the crease. I thought there were times where Brody Clays was on his heels a little bit, having to scramble around the crease. And I thought at times it looked like Knoxville really could have put this one away even sooner. After Roanoke clawed their way back in to make it a one-goal game in the third period, Tyler Williams had a look from behind the net where he found Karapov out by the bottom of the left circle, and the puck kind of skips over Karapov's stick. And if Andrew hangs on to that pass, it's a 5-3 hockey game because Clays isn't in position to get over back to the short side post. So I thought Knoxville did some really good things offensively. The forecheck continues to be pretty consistent, and John Gurskus talked about that in the pregame interview. Really, the last couple of games, he's talked openly about how he really likes the forecheck, and he thought the forecheck was actually really strong even in the loss on Friday. It just didn't result in scoring chances for Knoxville. And so the Ice Bears find a way to turn that into scoring opportunities. The power play goal ended up being really big for Knoxville, but then the Brendan Dowler goal was all about the forecheck. Knoxville has a net mouth scramble. The puck comes free. Jimmy Soper does a good job at containing the play, gets the puck over to Jarrett Cupp. Cupp gets it back to Soper at the point. He finds Dowler in the high slot, and Dowler puts it home. And so I thought for Knoxville, it was an excellent response to just a really tough outing on Friday. And you heard Gurskus talk about this in the pregame interview before Saturday's game. He said, I thought we deserved better than a 5-0 game. And again, typically you put up more than 40 shots on goal in this league, you're usually not going to get shut out. And for Knoxville, that just wasn't the case, but they bounced back with a strong effort on Saturday. And after only scoring one goal in their first two games, you saw more grade A's. You obviously saw more goals. You saw three in the second period alone. And then they got what ended up being the game winner in the third period to make it a 4-1 game. And then Outen goes down halfway through the third period. Mundinger has to come in. He kind of gets a tough break on that first goal. Man's left open in the slot as Dorsey gets his second. And then Corey Doney scores off a play that was offside, that the linesman wasn't in position. He was about 4 or 5 feet off the blue line, and so he's not in position to make the call. But it was an offside play that ended up being maintained by Roanoke in the zone, and Doney throws it through traffic, and Mundinger acknowledged afterwards that he, was screened. It was a good screen set up by Roanoke, and so the puck finds its way in off his blocker side. But credit to Mundinger, because that deflected shot that came loose off of his glove side that he managed to snag right off the post was big. That one could have gone Roanoke's way, and he made some other big saves down the stretch that allowed Knoxville to preserve the win. So it wasn't a pretty final 15 minutes. It was honestly probably a very frustrating final 15 minutes for Knoxville when you consider Outen, as well as he played. He stopped 29 of 30 shots before Mundinger had to come into the game. And that's not really a good situation for anybody. It's not a good situation for Outen because he doesn't get to finish his pro debut. He gets injured. And so obviously still awaiting official word on what's going to be happening with Tyreek there. But also for Mundinger, you're sitting for 2.5 hours since warmups. And so you haven't seen a puck since warmups, and you go into warmups knowing that you're not starting that night. And so obviously you have to be ready to go in any given situation. But it's one thing when you're going in mop-up duty because the starting goalie has maybe given up a lot of goals and the game is no longer in hand. But when you have to go in 2.5 hours in a game that, you're up by 3, sure, but playing in Roanoke on a Saturday night, that a Dan Bremner coach team is not just going to go away quietly. They're going to continue to push. And I thought Roanoke came out with the accelerator on as soon as the goalie switch happened, knowing, hey, Mundinger's cold. If we get one on him early, we turn this into a different hockey game. And they score back-to-back goals in less than a minute. And then it becomes, instead of Knoxville carrying the pace of play as they did for most of the first 2.5 periods, it's Knoxville having to hang on for dear life over the final 8 minutes and really only got one quality scoring chance over that time after Roanoke made it a 1-goal hockey game. And so I think for Knoxville, you have to credit them for seeing a game that they controlled suddenly fall out of their hands to a degree, but maintain the win in the end. And so sometimes it's not always pretty, but as long as you get the 2 points at the end, and happy to see them close it out in regulation. This play by Davide Gaeta sweeping Travis Broman's wraparound attempt right off the goal line turned out to be huge. At the time, didn't seem like it was going to be that big of an issue because Knoxville had a 3-goal lead, but it turned out to be a game-saving play. And Gaeta's been excellent on the back check, and I think the coaches really like what they've seen out of him. And we haven't seen him produce offensively yet. He was the FPHL forward of the year last season while playing for Watertown, put up a ton of points, and haven't seen him get that first SPHL point yet. But I think what you see from him from a defensive standpoint has been really, really impressive. And I think Knoxville has to be pleased with what they've gotten out of some of their newcomers this year. Obviously, Blake Tosto already has a goal and an assist. You've seen Andrew Karapov score his first goal, and John Gerska said in the pregame interview, I think he's going to get on the score sheet tonight. He did that. He gave Knoxville its first lead of the game with that goal halfway through the second period from the right circle. Was a really nice shot, maneuvered his way around a Roanoke skater and just put it top shelf over Brody Clays. And I think that's something you have to acknowledge too, is that you have 4 goals that found their way in all on the upper shelf of the net. Carson Vance doing what he kind of does really well in scoring from the blue line on the power play. And I think Knoxville really missed him in the finals last year against Evansville. He went down with an injury in game 3 against Birmingham in the semifinal series, didn't get to play in that championship series. And I think you have to acknowledge what Vance brings to the table offensively for Knoxville. He was coming off a great season offensively last year, 7 goals, 28 points. And so he finds that seam in the net front traffic on the power play, gets Knoxville started offensively, and then Karapov's goal, Dowler's goal, really nice shots from the slot and the circle that beat Brody Clays up high, and then the transition play that kind of breaks out of the neutral zone. And it's one thing to be able to be really good in transition on the breakout. It's another thing when you can turn a neutral zone trap into an immediate scoring chance. And I thought Knoxville accelerated into that play really well. Jarrett Cupp sees a seam up on the left side, banks the pass ahead to Eric Olson. He finds Jason Branshaw, who read that play really, really well. And actually, when you look at how this play kind of develops for Knoxville in the neutral zone because they're using the alternate camera angle. There's Jason Branshaw right at the center circle. He sees where this play's going. Olsen finds him immediately, and then he finds the back bar behind Clays on his glove side. And I just think this is a really nice play overall by Cup. Olsen has great puck vision. I think Olsen, through 2 games, he missed the season opener against Fayetteville, but I think Eric Olsen, coming off his rookie season last year, I think that you've seen some noticeable improvement from him. And Gurskus talked about that. He's a really reliable center. He wins a lot of faceoffs. He's going to be helpful in the D zone. And so seeing him get on the score sheet early, I think, is really nice to see, because just seeing that complementary scoring. And they've mixed up the lines. We haven't seen a consistent lineup from Knoxville yet. Part of that is because Noah Finstrom didn't play in the game on Saturday against Roanoke. Eric Olsen, as we mentioned, he didn't play in the season opener. Andrew Karapov wasn't here yet, as he was still up with his ECHL camp. He didn't come to practice until the following week, and then joined the team ahead of the home and home against the Rail Yard Dogs. So we haven't seen the same personnel quite exactly. And so they've been playing around with those lines a little bit. I do think we've seen some offensive success with Tyler Williams and Jimmy Soper playing together. I know there was a lot of excitement from the preseason game with Williams, Branshaw, and Blake Tosto all playing together, that Michigan line. Those guys have a lot of speed and skill, but I think breaking those guys up and mixing it around, those guys have been able to contribute playing with other lines, and that's been really cool to see. Tyler Williams assisting on the goal by Karapov. He also assisted on the initial goal to Vance. Eric Olsen gets on the stat sheet. Jason Branshaw scores a goal playing on Olsen's line. And then you see Blake Tosto assisting on a goal as well on the power play to Vance's goal. So it's been really neat seeing those guys, even when they maybe have been broken up a little bit, all still contributing in what was a big win for Knoxville. You avoid an 0-3 start, and you get a nice win on the road against a quality opponent, and hopefully build some momentum as you get ready to come back home and take on Roanoke again. And so we'll see if the smaller ice maybe plays an impact, as opposed to how Knoxville was able to use a little bit more space in the game on Saturday. Obviously, the Knoxville Civic Coliseum, a little bit of a smaller sheet, but I think Knoxville has to be pleased with the way that it came out and played really well through the majority of that game on Saturday, and played deserving of the win. Obviously had to hang on there at the end, but credit to the Ice Bears. I think it's a good win, bouncing back from a 5-0 loss. And keep in mind, Knoxville's kind of done that before. Last year, Knoxville lost its home opener to Quad City 5-0, was down 3-1 in the third period. The following night against the Storm, came back, tied the game, ended up taking an overtime loss, but claimed a point in that game. And ends up losing the following week to Fayetteville, but then takes 2 out of 3 in their first 3-3 of the season a week after that. So it can lead to success to have a performance like that, where you can bounce back and give the guys confidence that you're a better team than what happened in the home opener. But there's obviously a lot to look forward to for Knoxville this season, and I think you've seen flashes of what this team can be. And obviously, Roanoke's always going to be a tough opponent, so 2 really tough games against the Rail Yard Dogs. Would expect another one this Friday as the Ice Bears get ready to play on Halloween. Random statistic, Knoxville is 1-2 all time playing on Halloween, and it's hard to believe it's only happened 3 times before. But the Ice Bears most recently lost to Huntsville back in 2021, and I think you have to go all the way back to maybe 2010, 2011. The other 2 Halloween games were before I got here, and I've been here for a while. So, so I've only gotten to see 1 Halloween game before. That was at home against the Havoc. And then so now just the 4th Halloween game in franchise history. But Knoxville 1-2 all time when playing on Halloween, for what it's worth. Obviously, Knoxville would love to draw even in that category. More importantly, would love to draw even from a overall season standings standpoint, as the Ice Bears are now 1-2 coming off the win over Roanoke on Saturday. So we will continue to take a look at what's happening around the rest of the league. Knoxville finally playing a different opponent other than Roanoke on Saturday. The Ice Bears will have played 4 games before against just 2 opponents to start the season. They'll take on Birmingham, a team that they saw a few weeks ago, but a very different looking Birmingham squad than who the Ice Bears saw on October 10th. And so they will start the month of November facing Birmingham. And also we'll take a look at the Mateo Ybarra suspension. He was given 7 games by the SPHL earlier this week, stemming kind of from a couple of incidents that took place during that Huntsville-Macon game over the weekend, a couple of suspensions for Huntsville as well. So we'll get into that a little bit and set the stage for the upcoming weekend. But the Ice Bears defeat Roanoke 4-3 on Saturday at the Berglund Center, and the Ice Bears look to move forward as they take on Roanoke and Birmingham this upcoming weekend. I'm Joel Silverberg. You are listening to the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast, presented by Wings Etc.
You're listening to the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast, sponsored by Wings Etc. Good food and great times await at Wings Etc.
So the Knoxville Ice Bears take on the Birmingham Bulls this upcoming Saturday. Birmingham has played in 3 games this season. They're 0-1-2, so the only team in the league without a win, but they do have 2 points, and so they a couple of other teams that do have a win, including Knoxville, including Roanoke, including Quad City, which is 1-2 to start the year. But all of Birmingham's games have been decided by just 1 goal. So they had the 2 shootout losses to Evansville and Macon to start out the year. They had a 2-0 lead in that game on Friday against the Mayhem, a couple of early goals, including utilizing the power play, and then dropped a close 3-2 decision to Pensacola on Saturday down at the hangar. Shane Bull with a hat trick in that game for the Ice Flyers. And this is a team that is losing a ton of key pieces from their run last year. Remember, Birmingham went into the playoffs as arguably the hottest team in the SPHL, despite being the 4 seed. They swept Fayetteville, had a 1-game lead against the Ice Bears in the semifinal. Knoxville comes out red hot in game 2 and then has a quick turnaround and manages to get a strong start and hang on in the third period for a 4-2 win in game 3 to go to the finals. But Birmingham, you look at some of the pieces that they're missing from last year's team. No Carson Rose, no Drake Glover, no Nikita Kozarev, no Andrew Ballant. Defensively, no Kyler Matthews, no Ryan Romeo, no Taylor Brierly. And in goal, Hayden Stewart is back, but no Austin Lott. So this is a very different looking Birmingham team that still has some pieces from last year, including some guys that came in late. Obviously, the most explosive players on that front line that fans are probably going to recognize are Philemon and Arkip Ledzianko. And looking at those two, they're so dangerous when they're on the ice together. And then you see some of the other familiar faces, Connor Scahill, Shane Murphy, Cole Youngworth, number of guys that are back from last year's team. And so it's a matter of trying to reload a little bit, especially offensively with some of the key pieces that you miss if you're Birmingham. Parker Soretsky's gotten off to a really nice start. He leads the team in points, 4 assists in 3 games. Connor Scahill, Doug Scott, Shane Murphy, they all have 2 goals each. And so you're needing a little bit more complementary scoring from all 3 of your lines if you're Birmingham. And then, of course, Hayden Stewart is always going to give you an opportunity to win whenever he's in net. Jacob Musatelli seemed like he played pretty well in the 1 game that he lost. He took the L in that Macon shootout loss on Friday, but played pretty well throughout the course of that game. And so for Birmingham, you're coming off a 3-year stretch where you make the finals as the 2 seed, then you're the number 1 seed, lose in the first round, but still had a great regular season. And then you end up being a top half team, which, keep in mind, Birmingham around December was struggling. They were dealing with a ton of injuries. Carson Rose was dealing with some nagging stuff, was kind of in and out of the lineup. They had guys on call up. Trevor Thurston was gone to the ECHL for a while. And so they had a number of guys that just weren't available throughout the course of the season. I think the inconsistency with the lineup made it a little bit difficult for them to really find a rhythm, but then they start to get into a groove. They get Andrew Ballant down from the ECHL after he's let go by the Idaho Steelheads, and they immediately start to cook. I think something like 9 out of 11 games, I think at one point they won during the regular season. So go into the postseason with a ton of confidence, a ton of offensive firepower, and a goalie in Austin Lotz who was clearly playing like it was going to be his last season, obviously playing with a mission. And that says something when Austin Lotz is your ace going into the playoffs and your backup is the reigning SPHL goaltender of the year in Hayden Stewart. So Birmingham able to put it together during the second half of the year. Credit to them for doing that, but there are a lot of pieces from that team that aren't there anymore. And it doesn't mean that they can't turn this season around. Obviously, there's still 55 games left to play in the regular season. And you've got some guys that have stepped up, that have put together a little bit of production. And I think Soretsky's kind of the start of that, being able to set guys up. But the Ledzianko brothers, you see them playing in that game on Friday against Macon, and they still move the puck really well. It's still a pretty efficient power play. You like the way that they move the puck around. They create scoring opportunities. They get guys open in space, especially in the slot area. That's how they scored that power play goal against the Mayhem on Friday in the first period. So this is a team that still can do some good things. And again, we're talking about 3 1-goal losses. You lose to Pensacola 3-2 on a night where Shane Bull, a former college All-American, has himself a night. And keep in mind, he was with the Ice Flyers for a little bit of time last year, but spent a lot of time up in the ECHL. And that's the quality of player that he is. So, okay, Shane Bull goes and gets a hat trick. You lose 3-2. you're going to have those nights, especially on the road against a quality player like Shane Bull. But then you look at the post-regulation losses. Okay, you're still picking up points. So it'd be one thing if we were talking about 3 multi-goal losses and the team was 0-3 with no points. Instead, you're talking about a team that has remained competitive despite the fact that they've lost the talent that they have. And so still trying to reload. You saw them doing a little bit about that through training camp, and they revamped the roster very quickly after the preseason game and got a bunch of guys back from the ECHL, which allowed them to justify doing that. But the point being is that Craig Simchuk and Kevin Kerr are not going to let this team lie idly at the bottom of the standings with the roster that they've got. If they're not getting the results, they are not going to hesitate to make changes. And I think you've seen a team that has come out and has forced teams to really have to beat them. And that's what you're going to get, especially with Hayden Stewart and net. But I think they've shown some good things with Jacob Musatelli as well from his first career start over the weekend. So Knoxville looking ahead to Birmingham on Saturday. That will be an 8 o'clock Eastern time puck drop, 7 o'clock local time if you're making the trip down to Pelham. And of course, we'll have the call for you on 93.7 WVLZ, the flagship station of the Knoxville Ice Bears, as well as on Flow Hockey, courtesy of Flow Sports, the official streaming partner of the SPHL. One other incident, as it was announced earlier in the week, Mateo Ybarra from Macon was given a 7-game suspension for an intent to injure match penalty that he was assessed halfway through the second period of that game on Saturday against the Huntsville Havoc. That was Macon's home opener. Craig McCabe given a 1-game suspension for a boarding penalty, and then Terry Ryder given a 1-game suspension for an elbow that he threw at Ybarra during the whole incident. And all of this takes place in the span of about 40 seconds of ice time. So you see the board there by Craig McCabe puts Justin Thompson into the board in front of the Macon bench. And so this thing kind of escalates. It ends up being a 4-on-4 instead of a Macon power play. You see Ryder and Ybarra come together there. Nothing too crazy. As they come to the boards, Ybarra comes in high, and then you kind of see the swipe there from that angle of what happened with the elbow by Ryder. And then right here, Ryder is visibly frustrated at Ybarra. You don't see what happens, but fans have shared this video on social media upcoming right here that kind of shows what happened. And as Ybarra is getting up, takes his stick and takes a swipe to the helmet of Terry Ryder right in front of referee Dan Lulianello. So Ybarra, a match penalty, intent to injure. He was dismissed from the contest and has now been given a 7-game suspension. So he is not going to be eligible to return until the week of Thanksgiving. So Ybarra is going to be gone for a month, and Macon is going to have to find a way to continue to fill that void in the lineup without one of its returners. And keep in mind, obviously, the roster sizes are the same. So teams can still carry 19 players. The difference is instead of dressing 18, you can dress 19. So Macon, if it plays short, it can still have 18 guys. You can still go with a traditional 10-6 if Ybarra is not in the lineup. But suspended players do take up a roster spot. So, and you only serve the suspension while you are on an active roster spot. So if a player is suspended and then released by the team that he is suspended with, he does not start serving the suspended games until another team picks him up. So if Macon wants to fill that roster spot or wants to play with 19 players, they will have to sign a player to a PTO. So that is essentially how that works. If a player, so for example, Cole McKechnie was given a 7-game suspension a couple of years ago for Knoxville. If Knoxville had released him, he would not have served those 7 games until he had been picked up by another team. So since Cole stayed on the roster that year, he sat for 7 games. Knoxville played 7 games. He was on for 7 games, and then once his 7-game suspension was up, he was eligible to return back to the lineup. But just to kind of give some clarification for these longer suspensions, that does come into play. That question often gets asked, like, well, could Macon release him and then he served the suspension that way and then just re-sign him later on once his suspension is up? No, because he will not serve the suspension unless he is on an active roster spot. So Knoxville getting ready to take on Roanoke on Friday. They will face Birmingham on Saturday on the road. Tickets are still available for Halloween at KnoxvilleIceBears.com/tickets. It's going to be a lot of fun. The Knoxville Ice Scares is what they're saying around the office, but it's puck or treat. There's going to be a lot of Halloween festivities around the arena. There's going to be a costume parade on the ice during the intermission. So if you've got younger children, or if you've got a Halloween costume that you're really proud of, come participate in the on ice parade as we get ready for the puck or treat event here at the Knoxville Civic Coliseum as the Ice Bears take on the Rail Yard Dogs. Puck drops at 7:30. We'll have the call for you at 93.7 WVLZ, the flagship station of the Knoxville Ice Bears, and on Flow Hockey, courtesy of Flow Sports, the official streaming partner of the SPHL. My name is Joel Silverberg. Thank you so much for checking out the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast. Again, our podcast is brought to you by Wings Etc., right outside Turkey Creek on Lovell Road in West Knoxville. It's right off the interstate, so really easy to get to. If you're just going down I-75 South, get off the exit ramp, take a left, and Wings Etc. is right there on the right. Really easy access. They've got a great pub environment with tons of TVs for you to watch your favorite sporting event. If you're planning on checking out the World Series this weekend, be sure to head by Wings Etc. to grab a great bite to eat. Love the wings there. Love the curly fries. Love the onion rings. Love the burgers there. I know it's Wings Etc., but they've got great burgers at Wings Etc. I know John Gerskis, our head coach, was a big fan of the bacon chicken wrap. So be sure to check out all the great things they have to offer at Wings Etc., proud sponsors of the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast. Thank you again for tuning in to the KIB podcast. We'll talk to you next week. I'm Joel Silverberg right here on the Knoxville Ice Bears podcast.